everyone. This is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Today, Sher and I are diving into part 2 of a conversation around boundaries. How did we learn to set boundaries or not learn to set boundaries? And why are boundaries important? Lots of conversation last week. If you want to go listen to part 1, it's really leading us to where we want to go today. And that is, we're going to talk about you being in a specific relationship, maybe with your partner, spouse, or a friend, and look at 3 ways that we can kind of decide if we need to set a boundary for protection, or if we need to let some walls down because we really do need some connection. And I'm going to read a quote from Terry Real. He's with the Relational Life Institute. He has a really good book that my husband and I just read. I can't remember the name of it now. Do you remember, Sher?
So is it Secure Love?
No, that's another good book. That's Julie Milano or something. But so Terry Real, if you just look him up in his latest book, it's for couples. It says, you can have too many boundaries that keep you protected, but not connected. And you can have too few boundaries that keep you connected, but not protected. Sher, what are your thoughts on that?
Some of our deepest longings are to be safe and to be loved. So protection and connection are keys. We will never get away from that as long as we're human, unless we have just completely dissociated and hardened our hearts. But we long for safety and we long for connection and love and a sense of belonging. And so the recognition that boundaries is a key to this being a satisfying place in our lives. We didn't grow up knowing this. We didn't we didn't grow up as adults knowing this. And we don't know a lot of people who have forged the path for us in our real lives, who have shown us the way to do healthy boundaries. And so it's been a journey for us to learn how to set appropriate boundaries, healthy boundaries, how to take risks that are still safe, but how to actually move toward a relationship that maybe we're questioning, am I really safe here? But then also knowing, how do we handle this issue of boundaries if we're in relationship with somebody close to us, even a spouse, where our voice is silenced or we feel a high level of disrespect, or even sometimes don't even feel safe in the relationship. Where do boundaries come into play in these different scenarios? And it's just a very important conversation that needs to be happening with everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think it is starting to happen with more and more people. And, we hold a lot of grace and understanding that, previous generations didn't even have this language. We have the brain research now, and that's not making excuses. Something that came up for me while you were talking is, sometimes someone can want to dismiss or minimize this and just maybe say something like, well, nobody knew, or nobody's perfect. And like, we get that, and we hold space for that. But that's also saying that there's no place for the fact that we were created. Sher, you and I believe this, with the idea that God wanted us in safe, loving, connected homes, right? And so if we start from that point, understanding that nobody does that perfectly, but how do we get back to what was always intended for us?
Mm,
So instead of comparing, like, oh no, let's just get back to what would it have been like to be raised in a very safe, loving, connected, and protected home and body,
mm,
because we can redo. We can find that today.
right. Yeah. And last week we talked about how working with someone who is a trauma informed guide, a coach or a therapist or a community who can really help us experience safety in relationship and goodness in connection so that we can learn what do I do then when even in the context of those relationships maybe there is rupture, and do I need to throw up a wall and turn and run, or ooh, can I stay present and see if we can work this out? And so,
Yeah.
yes, we're learning so much about safety in relationships now, and safety in and in good connections. And it's made such a huge difference in our lives and in the way that we feel like this topic is so important with the people that we work with.
Mhm.
You and I have talked, Candace, about how much the issue of boundaries comes up often when we're talking with clients, and how many women feel like they are in a relationship with their significant person, spouse, where maybe they don't feel safe,
Mhm.
where maybe there is disrespect. And boy, moving towards setting boundaries can feel agonizing.
Mhm. Well, when we were discussing, like, what are three things that we can look at and consider, you had mentioned number one, how am I showing up in this relationship? And can I truly be myself? Am I hiding, pretending, and performing in order to keep the connection?
Wow.
Profound. Like that one thought, like just sit in that for a second.
Yeah.
I feel the pain of the years that I have done that. And I can sometimes feel the temptation to do it again at times if I don't feel safe.
Yeah, it almost took my breath away a little bit when you were reading it, just to recognize like how often do I show up as me, fully me, freely me, and I'm not hiding, I'm not pretending, I'm not performing, I'm just me, and like taking this risk of um, can you see me now? Will you love me now? Because this is what we want so desperately.
Mhm.
And the reality is, yeah, like you said, it's hard. It can be agonizing to feel like we could actually show up.
Yeah. Yeah. So just thinking of number one, like, how am I showing up in my relationship? And then moving to, we want to give you three things to look at today. And then number two, can you assess some level of safety? Like if we look at a scale from 1 to 10, and if you can kind of get a sense that you're hiding and pretending and performing, that could be every day, all the time. It could just be every once in a while. Only you can get quiet and really listen to yourself on this. And then, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, are you kind of in the middle? Are you like, no, I feel safe most of the time? Are you up there 9 and 10 that you never feel safe? This is important information.
Yeah. And very hard to know how do you set boundaries then around that. Like at the level that you don't feel safe, there is a need for a boundary. And really first is a discussion, perhaps, or probably the discussion has been attempted. But if there are areas where you feel like you cannot be you in ways that you want to be you, then how can a boundary be established? And let's just use an example here. Like, let's just say that you love the kitchen neat and tidy, but the people in your house constantly are just throwing their dirty dishes in the sink and cooking and leaving it a mess. And no matter how much you ask them, please clean up after yourself. I don't want to have to walk into the kitchen every time and have to clean up your messes. But day after day after day, you are met with the same thing. Okay, this isn't life and death. This may not feel like it's a matter of you being unsafe, but it's definitely a matter of who you are and your preferences are being disrespected. How can you set a boundary in that situation? And you know, and maybe we should just talk a little bit about what is a boundary, because a boundary has to be clear, it has to be communicated, and there has to be consequence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be, so it's going to have to be agreed upon, which is going to really lead into, if it's okay, to our number three.
Sure. Yep.
And like you said, this isn't a life or death thing, but I will tell you, I think it's really common in a lot of households that there's low level bitterness and frustration going on because there's these little micro things happening that build up in your system where you explode over the dish in the sink. And so I think it's actually a good example in that I think more people can relate to these things. And so like there has to be an agreement. So what you have to be careful with, if this is all just going on in you internally and all you're doing is complaining, you're the one showing up and needing to make the change,
Yeah.
because it's just there's no agreement or mutuality there.
Yeah.
And so and actually this doesn't even have to be like it can kind of in a way be fun. And I've heard of families that once everybody just takes a deep breath and knows what the expectations are, we can come to these agreements and then we can understand what the consequences be. There's a freedom that can actually come in that.
Absolutely. And I want to just review those three just kind of concisely here. So, number one is, can you show up and be who you truly are without hiding, pretending, and performing? Number two, are you safe? What level of safety do you feel in this relationship on that scale from 1 to 10? Where do you land and what do you want to do about that? And then number three, like, is there mutuality? Is there respect for your voice and for who you are and for your level of safety, or is that disrespected and disregarded? Those are kind of
Mhm.
the three questions that we're asking here as we think about setting a boundary and the need for boundaries.
Well, I think in the context of our, close relationships, and we'll just say partner, spouse, children, there's mutuality in that you use your voice and you get to, well, in mediation we call it mutually satisfying agreements. Okay, so in that place they get to have their voice too, right? So it's you're using your voice, you're inviting them to use their voice, and then you come to this mutuality, and then the real work comes in is what if it's not honored?
Mm, yeah.
And so this is the dishes in the sink, and that just, that's a something people can relate to. But when you get into um kind of more abusive type situations,
Mm,
whether it's emotional, psychological, definitely physical abuse, how long are you going to stay in that place of being dishonored?
yeah. How long are you willing to be in a place where, and I know a lot of women do feel this, where you feel like you are the child in the relationship and your partner, your spouse has the control. And that can show up also in a number of areas as far as roles and responsibility and finances and time and all the things.
Mhm.
But where is the mutuality? And if there's not mutuality or respect or honor, then
Mhm.
what do you do when the boundary is asked for, talked about, and then disregarded?
No, I feel like these two episodes that we're doing can be a little, I wanted to use it, might be triggering because somebody could be listening to this and they're feeling the angst of just living in this day to day. And I'm so sorry about that. And I've been there and you've been there. But I also want to offer the invitation of reaching out. Cher and I both can hold space for these places of ambivalence or these places that you feel paralyzed to do anything. And but no decision is a decision.
Mm.
And so we just I feel like I want to make it clear, Share, that people can reach out to us at CandaceShare@gmail.com. And if we don't work with you, we will connect you to other women um, and men that we know that can be with you in these places of what would it even mean for me to have good boundaries, set healthy boundaries. It
Mhm.
it can be scary if you've never done it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I want to be really specific here, Candace, and say back to these three questions that we're asking here. And I want to say this. If in your most important relationships you feel like you cannot be yourself, that you are caught in a cycle of hiding and pretending and performing, reach out. If you feel danger, if you feel like your life and your well-being is endangered in some way that feels significant, and that when you have tried to establish change or boundaries, it's been disregarded, reach out. And if there's not mutuality and you're recognizing that, hey, I'm in a relationship where even when I very clearly and carefully ask for changes and mutuality and respect and honor, and even when we talk about it and certain things are agreed upon, it's never really followed through with, and you're recognizing that, and you have that growing level of anger and resentment and just struggle, reach out. Like, don't wait. Or I guess I'll ask the question, what are you waiting for? Because we know what it is to work with people who are trauma informed and who can help go back into the dynamics that have brought you into a relationship where you have settled for something for a long, long time that has not been life giving or loving or the level of connection that your heart and soul long for. What are you waiting for? Because help is available and transformation is possible. And we know that firsthand because our lives have been so changed as we have moved toward getting care. And we love to offer that to others. So, yeah, I wanted to say to our listeners, please reach out, and if you're hesitant, to really ask yourself, what are you waiting for?
Yeah. I don't really have anything to say after that. It's such a beautiful uh, clarion call of our heart's desire to connect with those who are needing needing a guide, needing a helper, assistance to know what their options are. Sometimes we just don't even know we have options. I hear this word quite a bit. I feel trapped. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good to be with you around these conversations, boundaries.
Yeah.
And we may come back and talk more about it.
Yeah. Probably. If not next week, then soon. But yeah.
Okay.
Candace, thank you for just being willing to go to the hard places and sit in these spaces, not only with me, but with a lot of people in your life and world. And yeah, it's a privilege to know you and call you friend.
Back at you, friend. Love ya.
Love you too.